My intention is to have a short discussion and make it informal. I mean, maybe we can, see each other in a little bit of a circle, I'll ask some questions to the panel, and then at the end we are going also to open the discussion to the audience. And we've listened to many talks in this conference. The way I see it, Tapo is working on very unstructured environments, right? He's trying to get robots to homes of people who actually have physical disabilities. Vaibhav, from what I know, is working a lot on tutoring systems. This is a more constrained environment, right? And Stuart is looking at surgery. This is a very constrained environment, and very an environment where you have more control over others. So I would like to ask each of you, and maybe I'll start with you, Tapo, since you're next to me. What are the challenges, for you? What are the challenges of getting a robot to operate in a non-structured environment? I mean, potentially in a person's home.
Thank you, Lydia. It's a great question. There are various challenges, but the first thing, technically, is just as you said, it's an unstructured environment. So, for example, let's say a kitchen. My kitchen is going to look very different from your kitchen and your kitchen and your kitchen. My kitchen today is going to look very different from what is going to look tomorrow and day after tomorrow. It's just so much variability is there in each of our home environments, so unstructured that it makes perception challenging because there are occlusions, there are various kinds of objects, planning challenging because there is a lot of clutter, as well as humans are there, and obviously control challenging because in my particular domain, we have to bring robots very close to humans, like even touch humans, right? And in addition to that, personalization becomes, because every user in a different home is different. Now, in addition to these technical challenges, there are also technology acceptance challenges, right? I developed something. What does it mean for this person to actually accept this robot to help them for long term? And usage, can they immediately, let's say my students are not there. Who will turn on the robot? What if the robot suddenly breaks? There are so many of these challenges that can happen on the acceptance side as well as on the technical side that makes it really a very difficult problem. And we have just started to scratch the surface.
Yeah, and we are lucky that we have all these advances in AI, right, that help us going towards this this goal, and I hope this was reinforced by the talks yesterday. Maybe I'll move to Vaibhav now. Vaibhav, you have a little bit more control, let's say, over your environment. Describe that to us, maybe more broadly, since we didn't have the chance to listen to you. Maybe you can start, with a little bit of information about what you do and what are the challenges.
It was great to see the last couple of talks and also the entire the conference, right, entire event. There's so many exciting things happening in the healthcare space, including with physical AI. The topic within this, or the area within this, which I focus on, is in terms of the workflows. Workflows within the clinic, specifically for nurses, pretty much, where robots and physical AI can help. And here, one of the things, as we saw in the previous talk, it can be in the context of practice, clinical practice, but sort of as a first step, a very important area that we see, both for humans to learn to work with robots and robots to learn to work with humans, is in the area of training, where sort of robots can act as tutors or guides in order to help someone learn the skills. And here, sort of one of the challenges that we see, or one of the interesting things that we see, is unlike a home where the user is sort of very aware of the needs in terms of what they need from a robot, for a workflow sort of setting, you kind of have to convince a person who's working or person who's learning why they even need a robot. So one thing that we've been very mindful of in our work, in our research, is to bring the people along as we are designing systems. We don't want to create a solution that is not being used eventually. So one big challenge, as Tapo mentioned, is user acceptance. But here, sort of, it's I would say it's one different dimension of user acceptance, because the user is sort of can do things differently when they don't use the system. Once we sort of have the system, when we sort of identify user needs, there are a lot of interesting technical challenges as well. One of the things that we sort of want to do is for these systems to be very personalized, and the way for these systems to be personalized is through data. And when they are sort of training to be personalized, while we are making them to be personalized, it's really difficult to do this without data. So we want to do this with limited amount of data so that we don't disrupt the workflows. At the same time, we want to sort of get as much data as we can. So how do you sort of do this trade-off? You get data without disrupting the workflow and still making useful systems. So the control and the environment really helps us, but there's still a lot of interesting human AI challenges.
Okay, thank you very much. And Stuart, let me move to you, since we didn't have the chance to listen to you during the conference this year. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you work on, robots in surgery, and then also address the question of the challenges.
Sure, yeah. So first off, good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. So I work for the Bookout Center, which is a brand new initiative at Houston Methodist. It's about a year old, and we are an emerging technology development facility and also a training facility. So it's 35,000 square foot dedicated to validating the latest and greatest emerging technology. It's also 35,000 square foot dedicated to developing new technology. So we've fast become this where the rubber meets the road kind of area. Because out there you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of startups, new technologies that always show the latest and greatest things. We can do this, we can do that. So we say, okay, well, prove it. And we open the door to them. And we get that technology in. We pull in key stakeholders. We integrate it within our surgeons, within our healthcare practitioners, and we get feedback. And if it really does what it says it can do and can really offer more value in healthcare, then we will take a serious look at it and integrate it into our system. So that's one of the main things that we're doing at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I mean, a question that I think people asked, if you remember in the talks yesterday and today, is how close is the technology to deployment? What we are developing in terms of, it's either, generative AI for therapeutics, or generative AI for instructing a robot, generative AI in physical AI for having a robot move and perform something useful in an environment. How close is this technology being employed? Maybe we can start with Stuart here, because you have a lot of experience with different kinds of technologies.
Yeah, so I'm kind of putting it into two bags. You have physical AI and then just the digital side of things. So in terms of digital AI, so software-based approaches, that stuff is coming very quick. There's an AI committee at Houston Methodist that reviews everything that comes in. We have to make sure it's in line with state legislator, and the government, et cetera. And there's probably about 50 or 60 different things on that list. The physical AI is a little bit different though. That's down the pipeline. But what we're seeing in terms of physical AI is new surgical robotic systems, okay? So you all know Da Vinci. That's I've had a monopoly. Is anyone from Da Vinci here, from Intuitive?
Actually, I think you should explain what Da Vinci is.
Okay, so Intuitive Surgical, they launched the first ever surgical robotic system. It's the Da Vinci system, and it's gone through multiple generations. They've really been the main players, if the only players, over the last 15 to 20 years. And currently they have a Da Vinci 5 system, okay? It says it uses a little bit of AI, but what they're really doing is they're analyzing and basically capturing all the data from our surgeons. So the surgeons are using these systems, and they're just collecting that data, okay? Because they know that down the line it's going to become more autonomous. They can use that. But what's happened now is, because of their patents, for example, they've basically at the end of the 20-year life frame. So all these other robotic companies now are coming to market. So one example is the Samani surgical system by MMI. It's an Italian company. They're the first ever company to have a micro suturing robot system. So this allows you to sew vessels together that are less than 2 millimeter in size. So micro surgery applications. So if you have surgeons that maybe have a little bit of a tremor, or it's a little bit of shaky, normally it's okay, but this robotic system eliminates that, okay? And there's another one that we're really excited about, and that's Virtuoso Surgical. This is actually Dr. Bob Webster's pioneer in discovery and his technology. They actually, 2 days ago, got FDA breakthrough device designation category. So they're allowed to use their system now in the clinic to remove bladder cancer. And they're opening up their API. They can open up their system for research. They want us to develop AI algorithms on there. So it's coming. It's definitely in the pipeline. But the challenge is just getting that data. All right, you can go online and get lots of data, but get patient data, it's still really difficult.
And many of you may remember the discussion we had about getting good data, right? It's not that we just need data. We need very good data, and probably data that are for the kind of application that we are interested in developing. Because if we go very general, I think we all understand the problems of hallucination and of not really getting the kind of results that you want to get, and problems that are inherent in the training of modern AI systems. So this data is collected in a very, very monitored environment. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is mostly imaging data.
Imaging.
So all these robotic systems, you have an imaging panel there, so they're capturing that. And we now have cameras in the operating room that actually monitor real time everything that's happening in the OR. And they can start allowing us to predict what events are going to happen. We can basically enhance efficiency in the OR and the turnover rate.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I can add a
Yes,
little bit.
please.
So one of the things sort of I see happen is we definitely have this distinction, digital AI versus physical AI. But because data collection is a lot more difficult in the physical world, there is sort of this new sort of stream coming in between, which is digital for physical AI. I know, Stuart, you use this in terms of digital twins. In the robotic space, there's a lot of work on simulation and world models, which is sort of spinning up from the digital world, but to support the physical world. So that sort of, I think, is going to be a big factor in terms of getting physical AI across. And it's a very exciting space to be working at this point. Yeah.
True, and I think we see a lot of this. I mean, Tapo, do you have any comments on this topic? Since how close are your simulations to the actual scenarios that you see in practice?
I think, yes, we try to do this thing also, where basically the idea is, so there is one particular very unique thing about our domain is, if you think about traditional, this class of machine learning algorithms which are interactive, which is I explore and exploit, right? In our environments, when we come very close to humans, it's very dangerous to explore. Yes. So this is where we use simulation, where basically we do real to sim, we create digital twins, and then we explore in sim, and then we deploy this. But given again the unstructuredness of our environments, like human body, deformable objects, there is a huge sim to real gap. So ultimately what I'm trying to say is that there is a lot of development on the side of making simulators more and more accurate. But right now, the sim to real gap is so big that it depends on the task, like what we transfer, where we don't need too much precision, for example, to be able to do that. So my feeding work, we generally don't use a lot of simulators, because simulating a food, like imagine a cake with different, is just extremely challenging.
Very, very difficult. And another question that always is at the back of my mind is, of course we are collecting data, but are we collecting the right data? I mean, this is still an application where it's evolving. I mean, technology is evolving. So we are collecting, for example, image data. Should we be collecting force data? Should we be collecting other kinds of data? And how do you go about this question?
I can start, yeah. So I completely agree with you. I think what we found out, so actually one time we had a person with multiple sclerosis visit our lab, and their caregiver visited. And we asked them, how do you manipulate their limbs? And they were saying that it's an extremely challenging thing, because it matters not only where you hold on the arm, how much force you apply, but also things such as spasticity that changes how you move their arms. So these things, like the way the caregivers do this is there is a reactive, they feel something, and then they react to it. So that's why what we have been trying to do with our Open RoboCare is that in addition to vision, we are also collecting force data, as well as eye gaze. Basically, that's as a proxy to get intention. Am I looking at the next thing before I actually do the action there? So we are looking at these multimodal data collection. I think it's going to be useful. We'll still see how useful it is for robots, but humans use this information to do various caregiving tasks.
Right. Okay. So it is the reason I asked all these questions is to underline how difficult this topic is, how difficult it is to have a system that will interact with the world and will actually do something useful in the world. We are moving a step beyond, AI. We heard about all the data problems in AI. Well, welcome to this area. It's even at a bigger scale. So let's move on and maybe touch a little bit at the topic of autonomy. This is something that I think comes up a lot in discussions every time you have a system. It came as a topic yesterday with LLMs. Do you want them to be autonomous? Do you want agentic systems to be autonomous or not autonomous? Here we are talking about physical systems. What are your thoughts? Would you like the systems to be autonomous? And maybe this question is coupled with who is using these systems, right? Who is the user of this system, and what are the preferences of this user? As we heard that it's extremely important to put the user of the technology in the loop from step zero, from what I understood. Who would like to get us started here?
Yeah, I'm happy to go. And I'll maybe start with some generalities. So here sort of, we are talking about the notion of autonomy. So if you have a physical system, let's say a robot in your clinical workflow in your home, how much independence, autonomy do you want to give it? And here sort of it reminds me of like this, I think Einstein quote, like you want to make it as simple as possible, in this case for user, but not simpler. So similarly for the robots that we'll have to support us in homes, hospitals, and beyond, we want them to be as autonomous as possible, but while still retaining the right level of control. What that means is, let's say if we have a system that is autonomous, we still want the human to be in the loop when they need it to be. And this sort of is a very general sort of statement. It doesn't really answer the question directly, but it sort of goes to say that this problem is very challenging, deciding the level of autonomy. It needs to be a knob which the user can pick, maybe with the help of the robot. But what that knob looks like will look very different in my context versus in surgery versus in homes. There's a lot of exciting work happening here. We need things like transparency that Tapo had mentioned in his talk. We need explainability. We want humans to understand why a system did what it did. But sort of this sort of a very exciting topic.
Yeah, if I can add to that, it's really a risk management profile, right? So, if you have a surgical procedure where the stakes are really high, where one little error can cause devastation outcomes, then you might not want that to be fully autonomous at the very beginning, right? However, I need to make clear as well, though, that there is a lot of focus on like AI and surgical robots, but there's a whole host of other non-surgical stuff in healthcare that I think isn't getting addressed. That's just there for the taking, to be frank, right? So even just the patient experience, like at the hospital, right, when they arrive. I mean, have you ever walked over to the Texas Medical Center? It'd be kind of hard to figure a way around sometimes. And the minute, when we get training, we always say, look at people's faces. If they look lost, go up to them and say, hey, can I help you? Because you look lost. And most of the times they are, so you tell them where to go. But maybe that could be a robotic kind of physical AI system that goes around and looks at people and say, hey, how you doing, ma'am? You look a bit lost. Can I help you get somewhere? And then there's another one where a perfect example of this is in the pharmacy at Houston Methodist, right? We went on this big needs-finding expedition, and we're going in looking for problems, and we found one problem, essentially, where there's a small room, it's 10 by 10 foot, and all the unused medication gets sent down to this room. And one person, their sole job was to go through that medication and put it back in bins. So could that be autonomous? What's the risk profile on that? Yeah, that's an easy one, okay? Now that person can go off and do other jobs in the hospital that are more meaningful, that can get a better get better interaction from. So again, it's risk profile.
Maybe I can quickly, something I think I agree with, on top of what Vaibhav said, I completely agree with this. I think, as I was mentioning in my talk, the sense of agency is very important. So when we go to assisted care facilities and also to people's homes, if a human caregiver is not present, yes, a robot can do stuff. But even if a human caregiver is present, our goal is not to replace them, but to augment them. And here, I'll just briefly mention something, that it's a very contextual thing, very personalized thing. Just one axis of personalization is the mobility limitation. So back in 2020, we did a study. There's a paper called Is More Autonomy Always Better? Now, when I say autonomy, there are two kinds of autonomy: robot autonomy, human autonomy, right? And what we found is that when we did the study, we said, if a robot is autonomous in unstructured open world environments, there will always be failures. So we artificially normally added errors. We didn't tell the users that they were errors introduced by us. They thought the system was erroring out. And then we asked somebody with spinal cord injury, C1, C2 spinal cord injury, and they were like, even if the robot fails 2-3 times, like once in 2-3 times, I'm still happy with it. I just want to tell the robot, feed me, I want to sit there, because every time I intervene, it's a lot of workload for me. On the other hand, a person with C5, C6 spinal cord injury, that person said, if it fails more than 10-20% of the time, I'm not going to use this robot. I want to be in control of it. So it's a very subtle thing. It's very contextual. And this is just one axis with this small sample size that we have. But as you mentioned, I could not have put this in a better way. There needs to be a knob. And that knob change depends on the user. And we have to adjust that based on this.
Okay, thank you very much for this discussion. I think it is it's very insightful, and also it does relate with this the previous question that we started discussing but didn't really finish, which is how close is this technology to being deployed, right? It does the degree of autonomy that you're going to give to this technology would give it different stages of deployment, I have not seen robots for, let's say, helping at homes. Do these robots exist? I mean, can you go and buy such a robot, Tapo?
Yeah. So these robots exist. So the robot that we are using, the reason we were using that robot arm, it's made by a Canadian robotics company called Kinova Robots. They have around, I would say, between 800 to 1,000 customers all around the world. These robots are mounted on wheelchairs, but there is very little AI. There is some which basically says, I teach the robot to grasp the fridge handle, and then the person uses the joystick to do something, and it can automatically go and grasp it. Now, interestingly, there is basically Kinova was also talking to us about this, because there is very little robot autonomy there are many tasks that, for very coarse tasks, people are using those. But for many, many fine tasks, that's where you need very detailed feedback. That's where this robot comes short. Also, the reason that there is not a lot of robots, 1,000 customers, it has connections with policies and insurance and various other things who can afford these, because these are very expensive robots, at least, right? And I can go into a lot of detail about this, but it's a very interdisciplinary problem, and these robots getting into people's homes also need policymakers and other people to come together to be able to translate this into people's homes.
But these are also highly regulated in hospitals, correct? Stuart? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of challenges. Obviously, you've got to get the technology to the front door in the first place, and that's really dependent on your team, right? If you're a startup, if you're a company, your funding, market forces, etc. But once you're at the door, it's like, okay, you've got all the internal administration to get through. And I would, if you went to Houston Methodist right now, or any hospital for that matter, and said, I want you guys to buy this and use it, you're looking at 1 to 2 years just to get the paperwork.
Yes.
And I'm not hyperbolizing that. That really is the case, because you have You've got to have certificate of insurance. You've got to get the vendor ad. You've got to get software architecture review by usually your whole IT team. And you also need your clinical champion as well. You need someone internally that's kind of prodding and pushing this, because it will just sit there and not go anywhere. So there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people need to come together to make this thing be adopted internally.
Thank
it's
you.
all
I
about
think
people at the end of the day.
it's good to keep that in perspective. And what about tutors? Are they around?
Uh,
Robotic tutors?
not yet, not yet.
Okay.
There are sort of systems which are kind of doing pieces of it, but not in the form that we are thinking about. So it's really exciting space to be in. One of the things that we sort of, in terms of getting this there, like all the things that Stuart mentioned apply. But on top of that, when we talk to our nurse colleagues, they also talk about life cycle costs. So once a system is there, even though it might be as capable as it can be, sometimes it needs to be maintained. Sometimes it needs to be recalibrated. And who does that? Like, does the user do it? Does the robotics company come back and do it? Are those costs factored in? So similar in other technologies, like where we see that when it comes in, there's a lot of excitement and they can, like, there's a lot of promise. But when they have to sort of go out in some sense, you have to think about, let's say, the maintenance, recycling, and all of those things. Similarly, for these systems, we'll have to think about those. And we are getting there. We are like right now in the exciting phase of building this technology, but building those sort of loops from the ground up would be very important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So this is probably the best time to move into what breakthroughs are needed in terms of hardware, materials, algorithms, clinical integration. I mean, if we can point to a few of the things that are needed in order to get the next decade of physical AI to transform medicine. What can we put down on the table here? Maybe thinking about all the failures of our systems that we frequently don't show in our videos.
If I can take a stab at that, if I knew what the breakthrough was, I'd go and patent it right now, right? But I think if you look at hindsight, how technology is adopted, you need something that's completely ubiquitous in everyday life for it to really happen. And what I mean by that is we all have iPhones, we all have smartphones. They didn't exist like 20 plus years ago. We all have the internet. We all have screens. I mean, a lot of us are looking at our phones right now. So this is ubiquitous technology. It's just become the fabric of our society. Okay, we've adopted it. So once you start having a physical AI robotic system that has something like that in your everyday use, that's when it's really shifting and really happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, maybe we can hear something about caregiving.
Sure.
Tapo?
Yeah, so I think we need developments in all of these. Hardware, we need, again, I'm coming from the context of my applications that I look at. I think looking at something that is inherently safe, like soft systems, that can at the same time don't lose payload. Like
right, materials, right?
Yes,
materials. Work on materials.
Battery lives, like so that, like these robots can run for a long time, right? These are important. Algorithm-wise, basically, whenever there is a human-robot interaction, like converging to the common intent with minimal queries is something that we should work on. Thinking about planning, like resolving contact is another thing that's very important. Systems-wise, I think we really need to, as a research field, even my work, right? What we are doing, like the longest deployment that I have done is 1 week. We really need to see 2 months, 3 months, 6 months deployment to really capture the issues that come up. So that's another challenge. Lots of these things are necessary.
Yeah. Can I say another one there? So when I talked about ubiquitous technology, sometimes it's good to go back to thinking, well, what is it about my health that is ubiquitous that could be done robotically? And we thought, well, vaccinations. Assuming they're still around in the next couple of months, right? But there is no reason that could not be done robotically. I mean, it's literally, like talk about risk profile. That's very easy. Yeah. We were actually trying to get that going with ABB Robotics at the time, because that could be something that becomes ubiquitous.
Yeah, and actually I've seen that as well as blood drawing, which is amazing, but it can be done. Yeah. Yeah.
What I said at the start, one of the things that I'm really excited about in terms of getting these systems out is the ability to test them in a way which is much faster than we do now. So when sort of I look at my colleagues who are working on digital space more than the physical space, the sort of cycle of innovation has become much faster. The time from idea to development to evaluation, we can do very quickly in the digital space. That's still a bit slow in the physical space for all the right reasons. Like, I mean, it's good to be slow and steady. But if we can sort of accelerate some of those things, then that would be a game changer. Yeah.
Yes, very important. Okay, very good. So if we could let our imagination, run and think about what kind of systems we would like to see, I would like to invite both the panel, but also maybe the audience, to describe a scenario of what they would like to see, I mean, closer to their, to the kind of research that we are doing. If we imagine medicine 10 years from now, how would you like to see your physical AI system in that world, in the clinic or in the home? Something that maybe, we don't have today, but we would like to strive towards.
All right, well, I'll go with the big one. I thought about this a few years ago, and it's like, what if you had a hospital whereby the only people at the hospital were the patients? Because the whole hospital was roboticized, everything's autonomous. That would be a big fundamental change. And I had my colleague I spoke to, he said, well, couldn't we get robots to build the robotic hospital? I said, okay.
So
all right.
I would sort of, I have a very different view of things. I would want people at the hospital that I go to, even if they are like, I need the human touch. For me, I think what I see 10 years down the line is like a helping hand. Like I want physical systems that let me do what I want to do. Let me do things that are maybe work or maybe fun, but they let me do them. But at the same time, sort of step in when I need the help, right? What's the Beatles song? Something to do with friends and hands. So that's sort of the vision that I have for the robots. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tapo, would you like to insert your thoughts?
So whenever I talk to my colleagues in medical school or people like who are in inpatient and outpatient clinics, also VA, there's one application they always talk about, which they say, even if there is a human caregiver that's present, they feel like they are not the most excited to do this. And that is toileting. Mm-hmm. And the toileting has many, many, many aspects of it. And this is something that everybody has asked us to work on because it also has privacy things and many other things. But I have not been bold enough to work on this yet. I think this would be a fantastic problem to work on. Because even if human caregivers are present, it's something that they don't want to do. Again, I'm not trying to generalize, but in majority of this. And almost every place I have talked to, every place, including they talk about this problem. And again, I'm coming from the basic ADLs part, like which I work on.
Yes, yes, of course.
So yeah, I would love to see that.
Yes.
It's an extremely challenging.
There's really
Can I just
so
add another
much.
one,
Yes.
Lydia?
Yes.
Again, I referred to earlier how it's all about the people, especially in the healthcare, right? But people are humans, and humans can have bad days, okay? And that can completely destroy the patient experience sometimes. So, we take great level of pride in our training and making sure we have great customer experience. But robots could never have a bad day, technically, right? So you can have a robotic system that doesn't look like a big, scary humanoid. It's maybe something a bit lighter, a bit more friendly. Could be a little bit of a droid, etc. But what if it had that AI brain where it's already scanned your data, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, and said, oh, hello, Mr. Angus, how are you today? Great to be here. I've got a little song for you. And he's playing your song, and he's asking you questions like, oh, how's your grandson? I mean, that is a level of customer interaction that you just can't deliver this day. But the technology is there to get this done, though.
Yeah, it is.
That's the real power of this.
Yeah, it is very interesting to see how we all have different perceptions, right? How this technology can help us and, can help us under regular, in our regular life, and also when we need help. Either this is because of aging or because of illness, because of surgery and so on and so forth. And I think it is an evolving field. I mean, clearly we are not anywhere close to what you see in movies. This is very far away, and if you ask anyone who deals with robotics, they will tell you, okay, this is something that we do not have, we are not going to have in the next 2, 3, 5 years, I think. But I think we all are evolving our thinking about what is it that we want to do, how do we want to see these systems help us, and how do we get to systems like this. So at this point, maybe we can open the floor for questions. If there are questions from the audience to the panel, okay, we will take a couple of questions and then we'll conclude. All right, over there first. Yes,
Hi.
thank you.
Physical AI is really difficult, and even the tech industry, they're not sure if they're going to solve it. Now they want to solve like kind of the cognitive AI, and then insert the brain. So what are the technical breakthroughs that are needed in order to get there? Is it like the sensory perception of the system? And I'm talking about a general kind of humanoid robot. What's needed to get there? Is it the sensory perception? Is it the algorithmic infrastructure? Or is it just reinforcement learning that we keep trying?
I mean, I can take a stab at it. I think the answer is all of the above. Like, the good news
together and fast and reliably
yes.
and safely.
Yes, the sort of good news as researchers, which many of us are in this room, is these are like very exciting set of problems. And to solve them, you will need sort of expertise and work in all of these spaces. So it's not going to be just one or the other. And obviously, like 10 years down the line, one can look back and one of the techniques, one of the things would emerge as the right answer. Similar to how in digital AI, we see transformers and networks before that being the answer. But when we are starting out, at least at this stage, we have to sort of explore it all. And we'll know, depending on the context, depending on the setting, some techniques will win or emerge as the right answer, but many exciting problems to work on. Yeah.
Yes. Another question here. Yes.
Stuart and Tavo, y'all touched on this just a little bit. But if I were a patient who had a Topos feeder robot at home and I was admitted to Methodist, would you let me bring it?
Well, personally, I would. But
No, you would.
I can't, but my official answer would be that would be a legal question. So I think, again, assuming this is further down the line, at that point, I like to think that if you've got this robotic system in your home that, you know, we've integrated robots Methodist side, and yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, you could bring your robot, they could interact with other patients' robots, and maybe a robot daycare center. You know,
So I need one that I can put in my bag and bring inside. Okay.
Yeah.
One more question though. I saw the OT practitioners moving the mannequins, and the mannequins had the sensors all over them, but the only sensor on the practitioner was where they were looking. We need the OT's backs. Yes. Those are very important.
Yes, sorry, if it was not clear, they were actually wearing a motion capture suit. Yeah, so we were capturing the whole body data. Okay. Yeah.
So if I can say something about the previous question you said. So bringing the robot, I think sort of we have a very similar problem today in healthcare where we do handoffs. So when patients go from like one specialty to the other, and sort of there, you're not bringing the robot, but you're bringing the knowledge. And I think that would be very much more feasible with both digital and physical AI than what we do with humans. And there also AI that sort of is contextually aware, both about the patient and the physical ailment that they're going through, would be very interesting. So sort of a mini version of like bringing a robot, just the robot's brain here.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
One more question?
So at home, the physical AI at home versus in a hospital setting, which one would you say is like, what is a better place for physical AI to be? Is it at home setting or an inpatient hospital setting?
I mean, I would probably say at home now, because if you can have any robotic AI system that you can literally just buy off Amazon and have it delivered, right? That doesn't need to go through the FDA approval process. It really is difficult sometimes to get this tech in the hospital. And it's like I said before, there's so much out there in consumer health, like in-home health and you know, life preservation, life satisfaction, etc., that hasn't even been touched. So if you can make that available to people that they can just buy it themselves, or even just through their doctor, or whatever, that really is make a big impact.
Okay,
I
thank
mean,
you. Yeah, I see there is a lot of interest, but I would like to conclude the panel so that we have time for our poster session. This was an effort, as I explained this year, to insert this topic of physical AI into the themes of the conference, because I think that physical AI invites us to imagine a future where intelligence is not only computed, but also embodied, okay, through systems that we should be able to trust. Clinicians who are empower clinicians and empower patients in the end and have care that is measurably better. So we will conclude this panel. I would like to thank the panelists. Please join me in thanking them.